Actually, I listened to my mother. I was really shocked by that because she looked at me and she says, again, why are you doing something when you have a first love that you should have been doing all along? And
Mhm.
so I was working in the field with real estate, and into my home, I got a license for family daycare. And
Mhm.
that has a license for 6 children when you first start out. So if you only keep babies, you can only keep four. And if you only keep four, there can only be four babies. But if you wanted to do family daycare for 6 kids, you'd have three babies and 3 children over two. But I specialized. I only wanted to keep babies. And I started out keeping the babies, and I only wanted to keep babies to 18 months. And the way that I developed the program is number one, thinking about what I needed as a mother, what was important to me. How did I feel I could take the gift that I had as a mother and give it to the ladies and the mothers that were coming to my program? So I developed my program by providing everything for the mothers, the parents that came in, their diapers, all of their food. The only thing I asked parents to bring was a blanket, that one thing from home. And if they were breastfeeding, that I had at least 2 to 3 days worth of breast milk on hand. Other than that, they dropped those babies off into my warm, loving, caring arms and went on about their day. I wanted to take as much stress, as much um, of the paranoia and the guilt that mothers feel leaving their children. That's a very hard, difficult thing. Even though a person has a license, you really don't know who they are. So I wanted to make sure I did everything I could, that they felt supported, nurtured, and I could give them the best trustworthy experience.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Lanes of Mastery. I'm here with a very special guest today, full disclosure, who's actually my mother. And I have her on today, not because she's my mother, actually, but actually because she is a an expert in her lane. She has mastered her lane of child rearing, child raising, and professionally working with children, working with mothers. And I'm going to let her get into all those things, but her lane of mastery is really children and mothers. Mothers learning, working with mothers to work with their children, supporting mothers to be the best they can be, and working with children to raise their children, working with mothers to raise their children, working with children, babies, infants, all kind of things. So, with no further ado, welcome, Miss Mona Lisa Fortenberry. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lucky, so much. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here, to especially talk about my passion, my calling in life. I really started out very young, knowing who I was and what I wanted. I actually had wanted to be a doctor, an OB-GYN, in obstetrics and gynecology. That was the field that I wanted to develop in medicine. But I took a detour and I married young, thankfully. And I had, after a couple of years of being married, I had my first son, which is Lucky. And then from there, I just always knew that I had wanted to work and be the best mother that I could be. I felt that was such a gift to me. So after I had been a traveling mother, I traveled a lot with my children. Have always felt that nothing can hold you back. Hear people say all the time, "Oh, well, I've got the kids. I got take them along with you." This is how children learn and develop. They become a part of life and learning. Life's learning lessons, I find, are on the boots on the ground, and I find that. I'll start with my oldest son, who is lucky. He started school in Belgium. He only spoke French. And I remember one day the teacher said to him and asking him questions in French. And she said, "Well, who are you? What are you?" He said, "I'm green." He didn't know anything but who he was. And I remember where we lived, the owners of the place were talking about the building and how we were keeping it and this and that. And Lucky looked up at me. He was only 4 years old, and he said, "Mom, they're talking about you." I mean, he just had mastered everything at such a young age, and that's what I always wanted for all of my five sons. So anyway, as I began to go through life, I had more children. I have adopted two of my five sons. I adopted one as an infant right from the hospital, and that particular child had a lot of issues, from a brain bleed to being under. He was 1.5 pounds when he was born. Just very traumatic beginning in life. And I'll just say, right, with him, I knew just innately, intrinsically, what I should do for him. And that was a baby that had been at risk so early. I slept with him and I nurtured him. They let me took him. I took him home from the hospital even before he was even 5 pounds, which is pretty unheard of at that time. He's 33 now, but he was not supposed to leave the hospital till he was 5 pounds. So from 1.5 to me taking him home at 4.5, he really had come to be nurtured and loved by not only the medical staff, but by me. So now he's about 6'2". He's the tallest of them all. And just he's the one who has a lot of personality. He's a very interesting child. And out of all the boys, he's the only one that does not have a college degree. And he said, just be glad he graduated from high school. So, anyway, so then as I journeyed on forward, I came to the point where I started to work in the field of real estate. And I grew up on the west side here in California and in Los Angeles County, in Santa Monica by the beach. And I became a realtor for, at that time, it was called Merrill Lynch. I really enjoyed it because it's very stimulating mentally for me, and I enjoyed a lot of the things that were going on in real estate at that time, and it's just become still a very important part of my life, real estate. So after a while, I was working so hard, and I had someone that was helping me in the home. And my mother said to me one day, she says, "Mona, why are you working so hard like that?" She said, "When your love has always been babies, why don't you work with babies?" So what I did is I started to shift. I shifted from working all of my hours at Merrill Lynch and started to work part of my hours in the daycare. And I started off keeping 6 children. It started off a little slow. I had one child, then I had two, then I jumped up to two more. And at that
Well,
time,
let me stop you a little bit. When you said you shifted from real estate to, Mom, these people don't know these things. You have to give more detail. Mom, I'm gonna have to fire you as a guest. My goodness. So you said you were doing real estate, and then you decided to shift into babies. Not necessarily how did you shift, but kind of how did you shift? What did you shift into? Was it a home daycare? Was it how did you get your first kids? How did that shift happen for you?
the shift came. I listened. Actually, I listened to my mother. I was really shocked by that because she looked at me and she says, again, why are you doing something when you have a first love that you should have been doing all along? And
Mhm.
so I was working in the field with real estate, and into my home, I got a license for family daycare. And
Mhm.
that has a license for 6 children when you first start out. So if you only keep babies, you can only keep four. And anybody, if you only keep four, there can only be four babies. But if you wanted to do family daycare for 6 kids, you'd have three babies and 3 children over two. But I specialized. I only wanted to keep babies. And I started out keeping the babies, and I only wanted to keep babies to 18 months. And the way that I developed the program is number one, thinking about what I needed as a mother, what was important to me. How did I feel I could take the gift that I had as a mother and give it to the ladies and the mothers that were coming to my program? So I developed my program by providing everything for the mothers, the parents that came in, their diapers, all of their food. The only thing I asked parents to bring was a blanket, that one thing from home. And if they were breastfeeding, that I had at least 2 to 3 days worth of breast milk on hand. Other than that, they dropped those babies off into my warm, loving, caring arms and went on about their day. I wanted to take as much stress, as much um, of the paranoia and the guilt that mothers feel leaving their children. That's a very hard, difficult thing. Even though a person has a license, you really don't know who they are. So I wanted to make sure I did everything I could, that they felt supported, nurtured, and I could give them the best trustworthy experience that I could give them. So after I did that for about 2 years, I expanded it up into 12 children still in my home. I had two assistants by then. I had stopped working at Merrill Lynch because I saw my gift. I saw my gift. I enjoyed it so much. I'd get up in the morning about 4 or 5, I'd pray for an hour, and then my feet were on that ground. It's like my brain just charged and energized by everything that daycare brought to me. I could feel the, I could feel what I call the specialty of I call it my hands. I worked a lot with my hands with babies by touching them and gifting them. I bathed my babies every day before they went home. When those parents picked those children up, they were clean and bathed, happy and smiling. So after I had done that for a number of years, maybe about 6 years, I knew that I needed to grow. I wasn't really interested in so much in that it had to be a big center. It was just that I wanted to give the gift that I had to a lot of parents that didn't have that. So I started to develop some other things in my life that came along at that time that kind of stopped me from growing into the center based care at that moment, because I then became a president of one of the largest child care agencies, the resource and referral agencies. I became one of the task force for my city on child care. I did just about everything I could in the city. Then I went to the county where I began to write manuals for the county, their child care initiatives. And I really wanted to make sure that I was able to give families what I thought was important for myself, because I always believe it starts with you. Your gift starts with you. You cannot spread your gift if you don't know who you are, what you're doing, and what you feel is important. And so that's how I developed it. My parents had a manual at the daycare. I was writing manuals for the county and the city of Los Angeles and the city of Santa Monica, where I am. And it just grew and grew and grew until I just became then board of directors president of one of the largest agencies for child care resources and referrals. I also felt that when I would teach, I taught at UCLA, and I taught for the county too, working on child care health, because it's important, how you hand your baby over, what you're looking for. And even before my own sons had children, I always told them to do the research. Don't wait until the last minute and you're trying to decide whether you want to have immunizations for your children. That has to be something that you think about before, because a lot of times as a parent, a lot of things come at you and you're right there in your face and you haven't thought it through. You don't know what to do and you're making a knee jerk decision to something you really don't feel comfortable with. So it's important to me to have all of the support I could give to families anywhere that I that I could give it. My children, as I said, that I cared for only went up to 18 months. After I started to move into center-based care, it would go up to even after-school children. But I had people that came in that would work with the after-school kids because my gift was baby. And so I also felt that if I could keep families together, so I would have children that were sometimes maybe a year old and they had a 6-year old brother or 8-year old brother, I would care for them too, just to keep the family units together. To me, that was very important because of the mother that I was. Because I
Mhm.
was a single mother, I've been an adopting mother, I've been a stepmother, and it was important that I took all of my experiences and was able to take them and utilize them to all the parents that were coming into me. So I
So,
felt,
so well, let me ask you another question as far as it relates to the daycare. How did you decide, once you as you grew it and things like that? So there's a couple different questions. One, let me take a step back. When you were doing this, as I remember it, this was in the mid 80s, maybe at the mid 80s,
mm-hmm,
maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little earlier,
yeah,
early to mid 80s as far as the beginning of it. And you were we were in Santa Monica. And for
mm-hmm,
most people who don't really know, Santa Monica is a pretty affluent city as a whole, right on the
mm-hmm,
beach in Southern California. Um, and so there were not a lot of people, let's just say, as I say now, black or people of color doing what you did. How did you establish yourself in that environment, especially in that times? In that time, how did you establish yourself in your business and just yourself in that environment of professionalism, that professional environment, that area, as well as that area in the city that you were in?
mm-hmm. I became a part of the resource and referral agency. And so I would get calls from different people, and I began to reach out to other places where I saw they had resources for parents that needed childcare. And so I would always invite people out to my site. I wanted them to see what it looked like. I wanted them to talk to me. I want them to feel very good about it so that because my biggest thing that I became aware of, your best referrals are people that are already there or that are really aware of your program. And so it grew. It had grown so much that I had people calling licensing because I wouldn't take their kids. I was very particular about the babies that I took in. I watched everything about the parents. I watched how they would sign in. I watched how they walked up to that door. I began to watch everything and I could tell about them. So I stood back as I watched them and I had a sheet that they would use when they signed in, talked about what their night was before, about their diaper changes, um, anything that would pertain to that child. But I knew that I had to also work with those parents. And when I actually got married, one of the things that I was really not aware of that my new husband had told me was, he said, I've never seen a daycare provider have people lined up outside her door to talk to her. He says, I've never seen that in my life. And it wasn't that I was thinking I was so suchy much. I loved talking to them. I loved making sure that I could support them any way that I could to comfort them with all of the information and personal knowledge. So it wasn't just that I had the book knowledge, but I had the personal knowledge. They could see you, they could see all the other boys that I was currently raising that were still in the home, and they liked that. They loved to have you guys around and surrounding and playing with the kids at times. Not that you guys did a lot of that, but then I even started to develop a program where I called it Fabulous Fridays. And the kids would stay with me from Friday morning until Saturday morning. I wasn't doing anything at that time. I was still a single mother. And they loved it. It gave parents a chance to sit down and read a magazine, take a bath, wash their hair, go to a movie, have a date night, whatever they chose to do. But it took the stress off of them. And that's what I wanted my program to be. I wanted to be making sure that I treated people the way I wanted to be treated. And that's, I believe, how my program grew so strong It was always strong. It was always, I took care of the most affluent kids and families down to ones who were on subsidized programs. It didn't matter to me because I wouldn't let anybody in the program. I interviewed those parents just as much as they interviewed me. I had mostly doctors, I had a lot of lawyers, a lot of other people who, were just in the community, but in very high positions. And that's what they love and respected about me. They could go to other sites, but they enjoy the love, respect, and the nurturing that I gave not only their children, but to them.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. So, so you expanded. I remember the overnights. I remember the daycare, the overnights. I remember you having those like, Mom, why do you have to keep these people here? And things like that. But that's why I'm coming back to you now, because as a parent myself, I can't say I see the vision you had, but I have a better understanding of what you I have a better understanding that you were at least seeing something, that you weren't flying by the seat of your pants. You weren't just doing it for the money. You weren't, that you actually had a, to your point, like you spoke about, like a cumulative total vision of your daycare, of the experience that you wanted to have and the experience that you were giving to others, that you were providing for others. And I do remember how many of those parents, so many different types of parents you had, the athletic director at Pepperdine, Roxanne, you had so many people in so many different higher levels. Then you had some other people who were on the other end of the spectrum, complete cast of characters, and they were all in the same place, so happy to see each other. They would wave to each other. They would talk to each other outside. They would talk to each other inside. And it was all because of, like you said, you interviewed them as much as they interviewed you. And your vision for what you wanted to experience for yourself and provide for others really made all of those differences uh, good. They weren't contrary. They weren't opposing, right? As different as the people were in their lives and their cars and their money, right? So
Can
now,
interject one other thing too. And
yeah.
one of the things that I hope that I really convey to everybody is the environment that I put the babies in. In our infant part of the site, there were no shoes ever allowed in there. Never. Those babies were free to crawl and roll and just, have the freedom of being on the floor and just, the security of nobody stepping on them with shoes that have been outside. The environment was important. Their sleeping
Mhm,
room was important. All
mhm,
of that, how I designed everything. So then as you step back from that room to the older kids, then their environment was different. But I always make sure that the environment was conducive to the not only to the children, but to the parents. The parents, if they wanted to come in and sit, you're welcome to do that. Take your shoes off, put your purse outside. So there's no, I was very clear about keeping any germs out or to a minimum. I wanted everything to be nice and clean for my babies because that's the way I had always raised my own children. And as I said before, that's the way I wanted it. But when I started out, my rates were, I think, $100 a week in the 80s. And then I went from that to $600. Within 18 months, I was up to $800 a month at that time. And never had a problem, never had openings. And I said it with very clear language. I didn't backtrack or anything like that. So as I started to even develop further from that, I then went back and got a Lamaze license to teach Lamaze. I also went and got my doula certification, and I worked as a doula for only um, postpartum mothers or pre-birth mothers because I couldn't be a birthing doula because I had children of my own. So I couldn't go in and spend 24 hours, while they went through the whole birthing process. But I loved everything about it. It never got old for me. I was always excited to see the mothers being pregnant. I had a lot of older mothers that were 40 and over who were on bed rest a lot. And I'd come in and work with them. I've had one of my mothers who was an Academy Award winner wanted me to move to New York with her. And I was like, I got kids of my own. I can't do that. So I have really had, not only have I given my all, but I have gotten so much from that. So much from that. One of the biggest gifts is how my sons have seen me be a mother and a businesswoman and someone who went out into the community and aggressively pursued not only education, but life. And they would look, why are you going to a meeting at the city? Because I was showing them you can do anything, but know your lane. Get yourself exposed to things. And I would always try to expose them to different things, not only in the daycare, but in my life. So I think it's important that we take our children, as I said initially, when they're small, take them with you. If you're at work or if you're going to the grocery store, a lot of times we say, oh, I just don't want to be bothered with that. But you talk to them. And I know a lot of times for me, I was very concerned about mothers who were under so much stress. I could notice they they wanted to just have some peace. So that's how the overnights became so very important as well as popular. So as I was initially saying right now, the environment that I put the babies in was very important to me and how I designed that.
Mhm. And so so if someone is trying to start a daycare today, and there may be a young person like you were when you started, whether they're coming off a different career or they just aspire to be that like you did, they just felt like their affinity for children and things like that, and they think that, they would like to start their own center and things like that. I know each state is different and all that other stuff, but one of the things I remember is you writing a manual. I remember you having a manual, and things like that. That you wrote for all the parents and things like that. So if someone wanted to kind of start a child care center or a daycare center or a daycare business in a building, whatever, what are, just in general, what are some of the general things that they, not necessarily just a formal process, but what are some of the general ideas or thoughts that they need to kind of consider or think about, or stuff like that, as far as trying to start this business? What's a good way to get started? What are things they should be thinking about? Kind of things like that.
You have to think about what's your gift to these children. I mean, you're raising the future. You're looking at the future. And what you put in is what you get back. So I say to anyone who's looking in the child development field, know your lane. Is this your lane? Is this your career? Or is this your calling? Because if it's your calling, it will be as smooth as silk most of the time. If you are doing this for the financial piece, or you could stay at home with your kids, there's going to be some frustrations and some ups and downs, oh gosh, I wish I did. You don't want to go through that because especially if you're working with infants, babies pick up on everything. I could tell you the mother whose pregnancy was up and down, didn't go as smoothly as she had wanted it to go. If there was stress in her life, I could tell you who that was. I could tell you the mother who had a nice, calm pregnancy. I could tell you who that was and how that baby was going to react. So you have to make sure your environment on your inside is conducive to those babies and those children on the outside. Children are very perceptive. It is us as adults who usually will kind of take the joy sometimes out of the child. When you have children who say, oh, I want to help you wash the dishes, and you think, oh God, oh, no, you go in and sit down, let me wash this. No, don't destroy their joy. Come on up, I'm going to get you a stool, you're going to sit here and you're going to help me wash the dishes. Maybe your dishes are all plastic at that time, but you have to continually remember to know your lane, because when you know your lane, that's not going to be a problem for you. When you don't know your lane, there's going to be frustration, you're going to feel annoyed, and you don't want that with kids. So once you make a decision about who you want to work with, how you want to work with, set your times. Set your times. Okay, so I only want to work from 3 to 11. So, or 3 to, or 6 to 2. That means you're going to work with parents who are probably hospital workers or something like that. But you have to understand who and what is going to work best for you. Because if it works best for you, it'll work best for everybody else. Maybe with some minor tweaks, but it will work best for everybody else. Everybody can't be like someone else. It's not going to work well that way. And I stood up to any and everyone because I knew what I wanted. I knew what I could give, and I was happy doing it. So I didn't have to model myself after another site, another daycare provider. No, I stood alone on my own. And that's what I know made me successful.
Um, so, so the child care thing was one thing, but then now kind of talking about, child rearing and things like that. Um, I know that, whether I agreed with it or not, I think one of the things that I always appreciated and respected was I knew the boundaries. The boundaries were always very clear, even if you weren't home, because you had your own business a lot. So we had some housekeepers at the house, while you were at work and whatever else it was. But whether you were there or not, the boundaries were very clear. We knew what we could or couldn't do. There was no confusion. You knew if you were right or wrong, it didn't matter. We knew. And so, well, it's one of the things, as a parent now, as much as we swear we won't be like our parents, as much as we swear we won't do like they did and say what they said, in a lot of ways we do because it's what we know, right? And so one of the things that I realized, a lot of the things that I do are because of the way I was raised. And one of those really good things were the discipline and the boundaries. We were very clear on what we could or couldn't do, should or shouldn't do, when we had to be home, or whatever else it was, the conditions, your expectations of us as people, as students, as whatever we were in life. So I know you always said you always said something to the effect of like kids respect boundaries or they need boundaries, something like that you would say. So everybody has a right to parent their kids the way they do, and, because all of us parents realize this is not a game of perfection, right? There's nobody
Mm-hmm.
perfect, but I think performance and presence do matter.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some of the things, whether it's as a mother or as a child care provider, all the different lanes of child rearing that you've experienced? What are some of the things to a prospective mother or a young mother or even a current mother? You can maybe talk about different ages, but that you think are important for them to know, understand, and try to find their way of doing.
What's the vision that you have for yourself and your family, for your children? What does it look like? I knew for me and my sons, I wanted them to be raised to be the great citizens, that I didn't have to run around and say, where are you? What you do? They knew. I laid down the law and they knew what the law was. If some, I remember only really one time that I had to deal with Lucky. Well, we won't talk about the soccer or baseball, whatever game he couldn't go to, but he had been given a Jeep, and he and one of his great friends that I love so much had went out, and so they knew they had to be. Now they were seniors. I always would tell, hey, don't nothing good happen after 12 o'clock. You better be in this house by 12. You got to know what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't home yet. It was a little bit after 12, maybe 5 minutes. So I sat in the living room with the lights off and waited.
Oh,
So when they got home, they said, "Oh, okay, the lights are out. Let's go on." But you know how, and I'm sure we've all felt it. Something just don't feel right.
yeah,
They
yeah.
turned around after they had passed me and saw me sitting there. And for people like Lucky and I, we're talkers. Oh, we're talkers. We will talk you up, we'll talk you down. I didn't say one word. You could see the sweat dripping off their face. Their hands were wringing. I just got up, went into my bedroom, and closed the door. That was the worst thing to him that I could have ever
Oh,
done. I never had that problem again because
oh,
I knew what I meant, and they knew what I meant. And so when that line was crossed and that happened, it never happened again.
Mhm.
So I've always been very clear about boundaries because boundaries lead to safety in any relationship. If you as a girlfriend or wife say, "Oh yeah, go ahead, go, you can come back whenever you get ready." Who feels safe with that? He doesn't feel safe. He's looking like, okay, now if I come here at 3 o'clock in the morning, you gonna meet me with a skillet, or what's gonna happen? Are you gonna drive down the street looking for me at somebody's house? Who wants that? So if your boundaries are clear, if you know what's supposed to happen, you guys used to always say, how could you be the shortest and the smallest thing in the house and run it like some kind of drill sergeant? Because everybody knew I had the power. I used to tell the boys, hey, this is the golden rule. The one with the gold, that's
Where's the
right.
room?
Makes the rules. And because there was nothing I wouldn't give to them or do for them, but I made them appreciate, respect, and understand how things came in your life. How do you get certain things? How do you achieve success? How do you get the best jobs? How do you, whatever, how do you have great relationships? You get them by setting boundaries. What are your boundaries for yourself? What are the goals that you have for yourself? What's a vision you have for your children? I
Mhm.
used to tell my stepdaughter came to live with us from what, the 10th grade to the 12th grade. And
Mhm.
we used to drive by this certain place. And I said, every woman you see sitting up here at this liquor store selling her body, that wasn't the dream she had for herself. I said, so that's something I used to tell you boys. I said, when you have kids, you pay now or you pay later, but
You pay.
you pay. So that's important too. You don't want to keep just throwing your, oh, mother will keep them. I used to tell my mother, I'll keep my own kids. Yes, you can see them sometimes, but I raised my own children because I knew how I wanted them to be raised, by whom I wanted them to be raised, what environments I wanted them in. I wanted them to experience a lot of things. So when they would go off on ski trips, or they'd go to Hawaii, or we were in Jamaica, or wherever we were traveling to, I knew for the most part their age appropriateness was there. They knew exactly what the rules were. They weren't going to go, oh no, man, I ain't doing that. Because one of the son up under Lucky had been on the bus. There was a fight on the bus. They got into the classrooms, and then they said the teachers called them out of the classroom. He was one of them, and he said, in the office, call the police. Just do not call my mother.
Call anybody but her.
Anybody, because you got to know what I mean. But I never had to be violent. But there was just, I knew myself, and know yourself. To thine own self be true. If you don't
Mhm.
want to be a mother, don't be a mother. If you don't want to be a daycare provider, don't be one. If you think you're just going to use it for money, because it doesn't work well for you. You have to be in an environment where you have the joy and the persistence and the nurturing to give to others.
Mhm. And it's funny you were mentioning that. I remember us doing so many things, so many different types of things. And now I look back, I'm like, how did we have the time to do all that? I remember us going to, you put us in the Black Ski Club. I
Yeah,
remember us going to church.
White
I
River
remember
rafting in
going to,
Oregon.
huh?
White River rafting in Oregon.
Oregon, going to Utah. I mean, going to Lake Tahoe, going to just doing going to Jamaica, going to Hawaii, going to Europe
Yeah.
again when I was in middle school. So many things I remember. I remember, and it's funny because I look and I think to myself, like I had so many friends who I didn't go to school with, some of my more illustrious counterparts, uh, that were friends of mine, but we didn't go to school with each other, so we only saw each other on the weekend. So just knowing them on the street and their reputations and things like that. And when they would come in the house, they'd be completely different people. I
Mhm.
mean, they were criminals and thugs and thieves and robbers, and they were all kind of gangbangers and gangsters. And yet, when they came in the house, it was like everybody just kind of toed the line. Everybody put their head down and just and stuff like that. And so I'm saying all that to say, like, I look back now and I wonder how we did so many things and how we had so many different types of people in our home because we didn't spend the night out really. But it wasn't
No.
because we couldn't. I don't think we didn't think we couldn't. I just think we never thought about really wanting to. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was like the most fun was at our house,
Yes.
with the fake ice cream you used to buy from the
Yes.
price brand, the fake soda. I'm still mad about that, and stuff like that. But it was funny. It was like everyone liked to be there.
Yeah.
And I mean, people who didn't listen to their own parents. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying all that to say, like, how was it that you were able to because school was important. It was like nothing else happened if that didn't work. So
Right.
it was like school was important, and then we traveled all the time. We had friends that were of high and low quality.
Mm-hmm.
How did you make sure or manage all of the opportunities along with the discipline of like getting done what you need to get done, along with the crazy friends we had, the straight up friends we had. How did you manage all of that in the same environment with the same time? How did you do that?
I knew who I was. And when I knew who I was, you guys knew who I was.
Mm,
Not only did I know who I was, but then we would have family meetings. I remember some of the other kids on the block would say, "Can I come to you guys' family meetings?" They would ask, I think Marcus more a lot, "Can we come to your family meetings?" And I was thinking to myself,
mm,
"Yeah, what kind of, well, you come on and listen to these rules." But, and then our other rule was, well, that I set up was, no problem. You can have them come over and spend the night. But guess what
go to
happens
church.
Sunday morning?
Mm,
That's right. You going to church. So pony up. And everybody knew once mom's feet hit that floor, you bet
oh,
not.
the morning was worse. It was the
Don't be in
worst.
that bed. Don't be in that bed.
Oh,
Because
oh my
if
God,
I'm
don't
up,
be that bad.
everybody's up. I said, now look, you know where we live? Do you see these people sitting around here in the bed till 10, 11 o'clock in the daytime? No. Everybody's up 5, 6 o'clock. They're out there with on their computers, their laptops, they're doing the grass, they're watering, they're walking, they're talking, they're doing business. And that's what I constantly show. I nurtured and watered the environment that I continually wanted you guys to have in your life. Your
Mm,
your gates, your eye gates, your ear gates. I wanted to make
mm,
sure that I was giving everything that I could, but I laid the
mm,
law down in all areas. Just like
mm,
I mentioned before, you got to be home by 12 and everybody. I used to have a lot of the parents from EJ school, they would say to me, "Mona Lisa, you're the only parent I know who calls to see if we're at home, if your child could come, what are the hours he can be here? You're the only one." He said, "Everybody else, they drop their kids off and they're gone." Well, not me, because my kids
no.
are important to me. They're
Mm,
important to me. They're important to me where they are, what they're doing, and how they're doing it, and when they come. That's important to me.
mm,
I don't want anybody else to have that type of environment over my kids that I don't agree with. And
mm,
when my children talk to me and I talk back to them about things, they understand what that means. It's encouraging. It helps them to really think about, as we're doing these things, what they want. That's how I was able to trust you going to Europe at 13 without me.
mm,
Mark is going at 13 without me. You guys
mm,
understood exactly what was happening and how to take care of and I didn't get any calls from anybody about that.
mm,
None.
mm, mm,
Everything went really well, and that I
mm,
was really in a great place to educate you guys, not only by myself, but by environments that I wanted you to be in.
mm, mm. Um, yeah, and so um, I remember one thing, it's interesting now looking back. It's like I just do things and I feel like I have my own understanding. But now it's like with lanes of mastery, I'm like, I wonder why my mom did that. I have my own reason, but I wonder why she did that. And one of the things is no TV during the week.
That's
What
right.
in the hell was that about?
Yeah, I forgot about that. No, there's no, because what are you learning from that TV? How you get all that free time? You get out of school at 3 o'clock. You better get on that bike and make it all back down here to this house. And then once you get out, you better make sure that everything is done with your homework. You cleaned up whatever the little that you did have to clean up, because as you said, I had a housekeeper, and when all the other boys were
We
in
have
here,
two at certain points.
they lived in, because that was
Yeah.
important to me. I wanted you guys to have structure. I wanted you to feel that even if I may not be there, you got some loving arms to come home to, as much
Mhm.
as they could be, because that's important. I don't want you to feel like you raising yourself. No, we're not doing that, because then when I come, I'm friendly, but I ain't your friend.
Mhm.
Mom sets down the law, and now that's
Mhm.
why we have such great relationships now, because we learned how to talk and to respect each other from a very young age. We
Mhm.
understood that. And it's
Mhm.
important that your children, those boundaries set safety up so clearly. And it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that it's just like, discipline. People think that's a bad word. Discipline is disciple. That means to
Mhm.
show, to structure, to educate, and you grow them up in the admonition that you want them to be in. But you just don't
Mhm.
let them lose. You can't do
Mhm.
that because there's
Mhm.
too many distractions. I see these kids that are so young with these cell phones. You don't need a cell phone. Go into the office, call me from the landline.
Yeah.
And if there's a problem that bad, I'll know about it and
Mhm.
everybody else will. But I
Mhm.
feel that the most important relationship you have is with your the parent to child relationship. I hear so many women complain, oh, he is and he that, he what. I always look and go, you know what? He had a mother.
Mhm.
She was available or not available.
Mhm.
But you know what? What do you hear kids say when they make it? Hi, mom.
Yeah.
Hi, mom. Because
Yeah.
mom
Mhm.
means something to most kids, children, and adults. It means something. So, as a
Mhm.
parent, it's very important that you take that job seriously. You just
Mhm.
don't lay the mantle down and say, "Oh yeah, well you can," No, 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 no. Okay, what do we got structured up for this? Okay, we're having our weekly meeting. Everybody, get in here and sit down. What's
Yeah.
happening for this week? What is the grades? What do you got going on?
Mhm.
What are we doing as far as your grandparents are concerned? So the nurturing, the love, and respect, give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure,
Mhm.
pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And that's what I get now from my sons. My sons love. People say, "Don't you want a girl?" I go, "My sons are incredible. They treat me well. They all say I can all come and live with them if I ever want to."
Mhm.
And like they all know, yeah, I still try to be the boss of some things, but I know my lane. I know I'm not. But I always say to them as well, I always want you to know how I feel, but I
Mhm.
also want you to have choices so that you can make choices for yourself. That's
Mhm.
important. When you just tell children, "I'll figure it out, you'll know what to do," and no, because that's what's happening a lot of the times. We just let things just happen and let kids figure things out by themselves. They can't figure things out by themselves. They're still children. Kids are out here
Mhm.
smoking, drinking, and when does your brain stop developing? It doesn't
Mhm.
stop developing at 18. You got at least about another 5 years before that brain stops developing. So you can't just leave children to their own devices, to their own way. You nurture them, you structure them, you help and support them, but you start to inch them out little by little. So by the time that they're ready to go, Lucky's youngest brother called me from college many times. He said, "Mom, why do they do the same thing every weekend? They get drunk, they call the police into the dorm, then they have to, go down there." Then he said, "But why do they do the same thing all the time?" He could have been doing it too. But he said to me, "It's ridiculous." Because he had sat down and heard me go through so many things. That was a choice he just felt he did not want to make. So
Mhm.
it's important to love yourself, respect yourself, because not only is it for yourself, but it's for everyone around you.
Mhm. What is, at different ages, I'm sure it's different thought processes or different
I didn't do
different
baby
things that need to
talk.
be said again.
I didn't do baby talk. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, I know that. That
Mm-mm.
don't either. But I'm sure at different ages, there's different things that need to be considered and done. And so I know one of the things, not only babies, but you dealt a lot with mothers. And
Mm-hmm.
so for whether it's mothers considering getting pregnant or are pregnant or kind of like right in that right before, during, right after, maybe just a time frame, maybe like right before to maybe 2 years after. What are some things women can really be or should be thinking about as it relates to themselves, to their child, to, because I remember, I know you always talk so much about prenatal care and stuff like that as well. So not necessarily just when they're pregnant, but before or when they're considering getting pregnant, or just right in that space, like right before pregnant, maybe up to 2 years after, right? Because you have three, four, five, you have on, but during those years, you have very specific thoughts that are different than when you're 12 and 13, right? So before you get into this thing, or when you first get into this thing, what are some things that, like I said, I know you really work with mothers a lot. What are some things that mothers can consider or should be thinking about or considering, and how can they, to give themselves the best pregnancy, to give themselves the best outcome when their child first comes out, and their personality and their temperament. And maybe we'll cut it off at maybe 2 years old, and then because those are different things moving forward. But up to that point, the right before, the right during, and the right after, what are some things that you think, maybe we'll go through some ages, but what do you think some things mothers should be considering during those ages, that time?
You want to really think about when you're going to get pregnant, and more importantly, who you're going to get pregnant by. Will you have support? Who is going to support you during that time? Not just financially, but emotionally. As you develop in your pregnancy, that you have different needs. Some women are able to not have morning sickness. Some women are able to go through the pregnancy just with such ease. There are other mothers, pregnant mothers, who need bed rest. So who's going to support you during that time if you need more nurturing and more care? If you are a single mother who happens to get pregnant, you got to think quick, because now what's going to happen? Because what you don't want to do is draw drama into your life. You want to make sure your baby is in a good, kind, loving, peaceful environment in your stomach, because so within comes without. So you don't want your baby hearing all that drama and fighting and cussing and up and down and back and forth, and you're stressed, and then you want the best environment for your baby and conception as you can possibly get, because that's the way a lot of the baby will react. Think about babies when they hear whoever has been around you so much, maybe it's the father, the boyfriend, whatever, when they hear that other voice, how they turn, and they'll infants, and they're looking for that other voice that they hear that's familiar to them. So when they hear all that chaos, then you find them shaking, you find them not able to feed well, you find them not able to actually calm down, because babies have a natural way to self-soothe. But if they are in a traumatic situation, it's very difficult for them. You think about prenatally drug exposed children. I used to foster a lot of those kids, and it is very difficult to calm them a lot of the times. The way you talk to them, the way you hold them, the way you feed them. All I see mothers nursing. Wonderful. But do that. Don't be on the phone. Don't be talking to everybody else. That is very intimate, loving, bonding time. That's when you're nurturing your baby. You're talking to your baby. You're rubbing their hands. You're nursing them. Or even if you're bottle feeding them. Don't be distracted by everything else. You want to be present. Be present with kids, whether they're one day or they're 30. Be present. You you will find that the children do so much better when they have your attention. Doesn't mean that they're needy, but it means when they're not getting it, they do become needy. So as you have a pregnancy, and as you come out of the pregnancy, make sure that you have enough time to be with that baby, that you have the time to take care of yourself, that you're able to have a nice shower so your mother comes over so she could. That's one of the reasons that doulas became so important, is because so many families maybe were here on the West Coast and the other part of the family was on the East Coast. So who takes care of mom? That's what the doula is. The doula not only takes care of the baby, but she takes care of the mom. I would feed the mom. I would help talk to the mom, not only personally with her, but with her and her baby, to latch on if they were nursing, to help her, to show her how to burp the baby right here, rubbing between the eyebrows. All these things are important, but when you don't have the proper support and nurturing, you're by yourself, you're tired, you're drained, and you'll find that you just are not able to cope well. No wonder so many moms have this postpartum depression. Who's helping? Where is everybody? Everybody's too busy. I'm tweeting. I got to go here. I don't have time for that. Stop trying to be their friend. You're their parent. Those mothers need you. And you want to be able to stand up for not only the baby, but for the mother, because it's such an important part of growth and development. Those babies going through all those stages, what they hear, what they see, it's important. You can't be sitting around the house having a cocktail and that baby pick up a drink and drink it and they're 2 years old. What do you think? So you got to think about, what is the vision? What do I want for myself? I am, maybe they call me an old school mom, maybe not. I'm not judging anybody. I am only here to tell you my story, tell you how it worked for me and a lot of the parents that I cared for and nurtured, but also to let you know there's options. Think about the options you have for yourself. It's very difficult to raise children in this era. It's amazing to me all the things parents have to do now, all the things that are coming into the schools, all the different decisions you have to make. But you stop and think about, what is the vision I have for me and my child? What is the vision I have for their life? Think about that. And once you think about that, you begin to structure up how you want you to live as well as how they to live. But you want to make sure that their environment is as calm and nurturing and uplifting as you possibly can make it.
Mhm. Wonderful. And what about maybe two to elementary school finish, maybe two to fifth, sixth grade? What are some things to kind of look out for or prioritize or
Then you start to think about the environment outside of the house. What kind of an I looked at each one of my children individually and figured out, okay, what type of environment do they need? Where will they do the best? Do they need a preschool that's in all day? Do they need a half day environment? Do they need an environment that's bilingual? Do they need an environment that has social skills? Or do they need an environment that has social and education? Or do they need to be focusing on more education? You got to be sensitive to your child and start to structure up so that you can learn their learning styles. Learning styles are important, and you want to stay on top of how your child learns. They'll tell you how they learn. They'll show you how they learn. Some are very visual learners, some are auditory learners, some are very tactile learners, but find out how they learn. Talk to your children. Ask them questions, engage them. So once they're 2, 3, 4, you'll know exactly kind of, well, let me try this schooling for them. Let me try that school for. Sometimes parents don't want to put them in any type of educational program until they're ready for pre-K, maybe 5, 6 years old. And that's okay too. But understand, once if they're at home with you, don't sit them in front of the TV. Then that means you need to step in and do some educating of your own, some environmental inspiring things that happen, how to show them how to clean up after themselves. They throw all the stuff around in their room, and you go around and I'm tired of picking up all these toys. Well, wait a minute, stop. They're 3 years old. Here's your box. Put all your toys in it. I don't want it. Okay, I'll be back. This is what you need to do. I have to go and do something else. If they choose not to do it, you look, you peek in, and you repeat it. I remember one time we were on our way to Hawaii. Lucky asked me the same question for 5 hours. I gave him the same answer for 5 hours.
Mhm.
It's the same, you know. That's what that's what I'm saying. You have to know what the vision is you have for your children, your boundaries, their learning styles, how you're going to raise them. If no means no, no means no. No means no now, and it means no 5 hours from now. You don't start. God, they just kept on and on. So what? So what? Have you ever heard a kid say, "Yeah, I know she's gonna wear this about the time she's gonna wear down"? You ever heard kids say that? They know
Yeah,
you. But that's why my sons knew me. Like, man, that ain't gonna work. Call the police, because
yeah,
she,
your word.
she don't try to play her, because we were changing our spiritual sites when you guys were younger. I'm not going out there. I don't want to go there. And they're in the back of the van just going to town. I don't want to tell me what they didn't want, what they didn't want. I kept on driving what I was
Man,
doing, because this is where we going. Now you get out and let me sign you into this spiritual classroom. That's it. It's so amazing from that point and to the point he left and thought he was never going to go back to church. When he got to college, he and his college roommates would come all the way back to the church.
yeah.
That particular person wanted to stay with us on our property. This is just talking about parenting. And so he said, "Well, yeah, I want to stay here, out in the back with Lucky and his place and da 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 da." And I said, "Well, these are the rules." He said, "Oh, I don't have to do them rules at home. Da, da, da.
Mhm.
Pack your stuff and you go home then." What did he do? He said, "I'm abiding by the rules."
Oh yeah.
That
Hmm.
particular person actually became a pastor.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. It's amazing what you will do and what happens. You just have to understand, as a parent and as a person, whether you're an aunt, whatever you are, uncle, a stepfather, whatever, how you influence the lives of others. But know who you are, because they pick up on that, and show them that you have standards for yourself. I have standards for myself. And they pick that up and they go with it. Don't let, because somebody else said, "Well, he's 18 now, and so maybe," no. Uh-uh. Can you pay? If you want to go out and pay these taxes and all these bills, then maybe we can have a conversation. But if not,
Mhm.
this is the way it is.
Mhm. I remember always since I was, man, since I can remember you saying it. I don't even remember when you started it, but you always had the statement of, don't let anybody know your kids better than you do.
That's right. Don't let
What does that
nobody.
mean to you?
That means the time, the intuition, the thoughtfulness that goes into parenting has got to be there on a consistent basis. That's why you just don't let your kids go anywhere and do anything. That even means sitting up watching too much TV, watching too much of the radio and all this other type of music that may not be as good for them as you want them. Yeah, they're going to hear it. They're going to be surrounded by certain things like that. But you talk to them about things like that, because what you listen to, you become. That's important. And people think, uh-uh. And what you visualize, why do they say sit down and visualize? Okay, well, you visualizing with that TV, because see, your brain does not know the difference between that and reality. That's why if you're watching a scary movie, you'll jump, because your brain says you're in that situation. It doesn't know the difference. So that's why you have to be knowing your kids. Now, will my child be able to recover from that? Or do I need to put them in that situation? Doesn't mean you live in fear, but it means you are thoughtful and mindful about what your child can handle, what they can't handle, knowing them better than anyone else knows them. Because if not, somebody else can talk to them and bring them out into a place you don't want them to go.
When kind of backing up a little bit, just kind of talking a little bit more about your perspective on things and things like that. What do you think about What do you think about like not necessarily the ability, but giving people an understanding of the difference between breastfeeding and bottle feeding? Like, like if you don't have the ability, you don't have the ability. But I mean, is there a difference between the two? What is the difference? Is there a benefit? Is there, assuming you can do both? And even if you can't breastfeed for whatever reason, just understanding maybe how to supplement what you don't get from that experience. If you like, what is the difference kind of between, a new mother wanting to say, I'm trying to decide whether I breastfeed or not. And I look on I see all these commercials for Infamil and Isomil and everything else, other mill. What is the difference in those areas between that and the other?
Any type of feeding should be an intimate, loving, nurturing time between mother and baby. If you can breastfeed, by all means do it because it has certain antibodies and great things inside that breast milk you cannot get from a formula. It's like, do you uh, give your child broccoli that's been soaked up in oil, or do you give it fresh broccoli? You want to give it the best that you can give it, and that is the best. But a lot of times you can't do that for whatever reason. So that's why I say when it's time to feed your baby, whether you're doing it by the breast, which is the best, or you're doing it by a bottle, when you're reading the labels on the formulas, watch what's in this formula. Do you want your baby to digest that? Because there are a lot of formulas that are very milk based, and a lot of babies cannot tolerate that milk base. So you'll have to go to a soy based type of formula because the milk base can agitate and give them gas and uncomfortable. So then you change the formula. But when you do put that bottle in that baby's mouth, you don't put that baby in the bed with the bottle propped up. That's the time you hold your baby as you're doing with the breastfeeding. And you hold that baby tight and you love that baby and talk to that baby in that soft voice, because that's what the baby will also begin to respond to, is that soft voice, that nurturing voice. Oh wow, you're feeding so well, you're getting all the nutrients that you talk to your baby and you nurture it. That is very important in all areas. So when the baby then begins to eat and it begins to pick up and start with the pencil grabs and sit at the little high chair, then you begin to feed them different things. You sit down with them still and you have that eye contact. Okay, I'm going to put your food here. Which one do you want to eat first? Not what do you like, because they're always going to make that face because they're tasting things. And so when you give kids things, don't think because their face is changing, it's new. And so their face may change and look a little funny, but you keep giving them the same good quality food. You don't just, well, I taste it and I put a little pepper in it. Oh my gosh, it sends me into a rage. Don't do anything. The babies don't know salt, sugar, and all this other stuff. I used to trick my boys until they were almost teenagers and what the ice creams and all the other. We didn't have sugary cereals in our house. I wasn't tolerating that because I wanted them to have good, clear brains. And for me, I felt I wanted to give them the best. So that's what you want to do with your baby. And then once the baby starts to develop and pick up the pencil grab, so they're eating peas or able to gum, something soft like the mashed carrots or whatever, you still sit with them and you talk to them because you want them to understand that their feeding is a nurturing, loving time. But it doesn't mean because they're crying, oh, here's a pretzel. That's when you sit and you talk to them because you're talking to them all along. Hi, I hear see you're crying. What's the matter? And they'll look at you and say, yeah, and they'll keep crying maybe, but you're developing that relationship. So that relationship from feeding when you're bottle or breastfeeding to the time they start to go to the table is always developing. But they've got it in such a routine that it's not foreign to them. They're not taking the stuff and throwing it back at you because you've developed a relationship. When you don't have that relationship with them, you're going to watch them beating on the table and just acting like, they're acting like they haven't had a relationship with you to talk to you about what they can tolerate and can't tolerate. So start early with your babies, talking to them and feeding them. If you can, by all means, breastfeed because it is the best thing for them, for all the antibodies and things that come in the breast milk. Make sure that you take a good look at their formulas and see what works best for the baby. And talk to the baby in a soft, clear voice. You don't have to gaga goo goo. You talk to them in a soft, clear voice. And they look and respond to you when you're doing that. And then they develop on to other foods and other things in life. But it's important that, you hear a lot of parents, oh, he won't eat that. How many times did you try it? We tried it once. It's like anything. You have to develop a routine and you have to develop a certain way of giving your kids the same thing because it takes them a while to like something the way you think they should like it or how they're responding to it. But don't think that they're not going to eat it. They'll eat it.
I know, when we grew up, like I said, we were very clear on the rules. We were very clear on what we couldn't do, you know, all the different things. What do you think a, maybe we'll say under 21? What do you think a child or young person, late teenager, just under 21, that's in the house, before pre-college? What do you think a child's role in the house is? Their role or their responsibilities to the house or to themselves, or what do you think their role is? Their role to their parents' role to them. What do you think that dynamic is, maybe at certain ages or just overall? What was your concept of that or your belief in that?
Um, after 18 or after 21.
I guess from 0 to 21. However you want to break it down. I don't.
Well, whatever. If they're old enough to get up and throw toys on the floor, they're old enough to start working to put them back.
Mhm.
So that that not only develops a clean house, but it develops a lot of strength and integrity in a child, responsibility. They begin to respect themselves. Look what I can do. I can put my things back. And you keep building upon things and building upon things so that
Mhm.
once they get into, let's say, elementary school, they know, okay, well, this Saturday, I'm going to help mom cut the grass, or either I cut the grass, I've got to take the trash out, I've got to wash the dishes, I got to wash her car, I have to go to the market, I have to make the list. But everybody's a part of the house. Nobody gets to sit around and be up in their bedroom on no phone watching TikTok and anything else. No, we're not doing that. Because how am I helping them to grow and develop if there's no type of guidelines or standards or boundaries? You have to put those in place. So once, as they're small, you keep developing and building upon things, building and building and building, so that it's a very natural state for them. So then once they, like I said, they start to leave the house and they're going to either, my rule is either, if you don't think you want to go to college, you better have a job. And I'm not giving you no 6 months. So once you hit that stage, okay, you got maybe a couple of weeks. Either you're in college already going, or you're going to have a job. Everybody decided they were going to college. Not a problem. But however, when you came back home, hey, you coming back to the house, everybody knew the rules because you're clear about things. You're still not going to run in and out of this house. You're still not going to come in here and put dishes in the sink and sit up on no Game Boy all day. We're not doing that. There's respect for this house. So you're going to have to respect the rules that you've always respected. And I think a lot of times as parents see our children have gotten older, we think that we should ask less of them. No, we don't ask less of them because see, whatever they are doing now, they're going to do in the street. So then they get with a wife or somebody, they don't want to wash the dishes, they don't want to cook, they don't want to wash their clothes, they don't want to go to the store, they don't want to put gas in their car, they don't want to do anything but sit down. No. So you keep that going, whatever their age is, because not only are they respecting the house, They are respecting themselves. They're teaching themselves to be respected in all areas. And people will respect them because they see how they act. I have one of the other boys, the parents used to call me all the time, gosh, he's just incredible. He come over, they had dinner together, and he says, can I help you take out the trash? So I've never seen a kid like that. So those are the things that you develop because you want that child, that son that grows up, that daughter to grow up and know that she's got to keep her room clean, how she used to do it when she was at home. She does that when she's in college. She does that when she's married. Well,
And you
not
kind of that kind of was a good kind of segue into my next question when you were talking, which is obviously boys and girls are different. That's what makes one boys and one a girl. But but beside the gender differences, so to speak, do you see a difference in how they should be, I don't know, what they're made responsible for, or how you talk to them, or whatever else it is? Because, some people think, and they may be right or wrong, I don't know. But some people think a boy is this and a girl is that, so they're responsible for this, or they're not responsible for that, or whatever else it is. So when you're raising that person from 0 to 21, like you said, and you're like, okay, if you at high school, if you don't have a job afterward, if you don't go to college, you got a job. Does that go for girls too? When you're growing up, are they mowing the lawn too? Like, is there a difference in your opinion? Not only as a mother, but that's what part of the reasons I had you on here was because you've been more than a mother. You've been a doula. You've been a child care provider, the owner of a business, not just working there, the actual owner of these businesses. You didn't work for someone else. So actually, taking care of babies that were boys and girls from the beginning. So it's more of like not even just your mother opinion, but really your professional opinion, because we're a professional. In your professional opinion, if you want to throw your mother hat on at some point or something too, cool. But in your professional opinion, is there a different way to raise boys versus girls? Are there different not responsibilities like chores, but expectations, responsibilities as far as just performance and life? Do you make any distinction?
I think a lot of distinctions are made on how you see your own parents. I saw my mother as an incredible businesswoman, but a loving wife, a loving mother. And I saw how she treated my dad, how she respected him, and what his role was and what her role was. Now, and from her role, I was able to see the incredible way to handle business and to handle your family that came from her. I understood how she was able to walk through life upright and respected by all those who came in contact with her. And I saw the way that my father respected her. So, as far as raising them up, there are some distinct differences. However, I believe that it's great to know, just like now, I get out and wash my own car because I enjoy washing it sometimes. Other times it's because I want to keep my body moving. I'm 67 years old. I want to keep this body moving so I can keep it young and fresh and agile. I don't have to do a lot of things, but I do. So when I took on my husband's daughter from the 10th grade to the 12th grade, she had responsibilities in that house just as much as the boys did. And maybe she didn't go out and change no oil in no car, but if she wanted to know, she was welcome to sit and watch whatever was happening out there, how her father used to change the tires on the car, all of that. But you have to make sure that you are structuring up the basics with your kids. Clean your room, keep yourself clean, be respected and be respectable to everybody in the house. All those kind of things are just basic. So when they go out into the world, those things are carried with them. When they're not carried with them, it shows up. There's a problem. Then they're calling home, son, do you want that? Wait a minute. There's only so many fires you can put out for everybody. That's why I always used to tell you too, don't let nobody know your kids better than you do. No one, because you'll know what they'll tolerate and what they won't pretty much a lot of the times if you're paying attention, if you're wise to them. So I made sure that we had ground rules as far as what was going on in this house and how it was going to be handled. All of you guys knew how to take care of kids. We had the daycare kids that would come and cry for you when you were going to school or coming home. So, but it was basic things: wash the dishes, vacuum the floor, keep the house. And we had a housekeeper, but there were
Hmm.
basic things I wanted you to take outside of the house once you went to college. So then somebody's not calling it, or the dorm aide, the RA saying, "Hey, this dude, he got ants in his room. His bed ain't made." No, we're not. No, 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 because that's your responsibility, not to me, but to you. So I make the responsibilities to me because they're going to be turned around back to you as you grow up.
Hmm. Another thing is I realized like I don't want to say you discouraged it, but you didn't encourage it. You kind of discouraged it when we approached you with it. That really wasn't your preference, and that was really work. In high school and college, you never really, college we did a little bit more, but most of us were athletes. So, we had, I had my own little summer job at the school, working a camp or, or EJ doing his thing. Like we did little things in summer for a little extra money, but even then we never did it because we needed the money. It was always like, I always remember, at least what you said to me, it was like, you have your whole life to work right now, handle your business, do what you're supposed to be doing. Um, and pretty much I felt like if that's what we did, we just asked you for money and you gave it to us. You didn't give us an allowance, but if we needed something, you would give it to us. Um, so what is your philosophy on working when a kid is in high school or college? I don't mean like a little summer camp, like for a week or something silly like that, right? But I mean working. Like, what is your philosophy? What is your belief on kids working in high school or college?
There are a lot of kids who need to work while they are in high school or in college. They need to work, not only because of the financial component, because of the responsibility component, because everybody needs to understand that there are responsibilities in life. And some children, it's just like me picking out each school that you guys went to. Everybody didn't go to the same schools. I didn't
Right.
do that because I had to look at the learning styles and what you guys were good at. You and EJ, there's no way you could have went to a public school. You would have ran them teachers crazy. So I had to make sure that they were in private schools that were elite private schools because as we're talking about, the brain, Lucky's brain was so big. I took him to the gifted school up there where they only tested gifted kids whose IQs had to be 140 to even get in. So when he tested high like that and was able to get in, I had to make a choice as a parent. What do I do? Do I put him into the school or do I allow him a different type of experience? And it was a very big decision for me, but I decided I was going to give him so many other experiences that I felt just pigeonholing you into that gifted school where everybody was just a walking genius and sometimes a nutcase, in my opinion. I didn't want that for you. So I wanted to allow you all of the other freedoms. But as getting back to the job thing, some children need responsibility. They have to have it because they don't grasp onto the other things as easily as they could. And you can see they need to be fine tuned a little bit. So I had two of the boys working, the two middle boys had jobs. They had jobs. You get a job and they did. And that's what they did for 2 years in high school. And the other one went off to I put him in the Navy because he thought he was going to tell me what he was going to do. And I said, okay, I'll give you 4 weeks. I said, and if you haven't done it, then guess what? Mom makes a decision. He must have thought, I don't know how he thought I was kidding. When he came home inside this house with his father, that Navy recruiter was sitting there and said, sign him up. He couldn't say it. He better not say anything because I'd already given him that much time. And when you take time, see, one thing I don't like, don't waste my time and don't disrespect me. We're all good from that point. So he didn't believe it. He'd already gotten into Colorado. He'd already even had a letter from Harvard, but he wasn't
Mhm.
willing to go the whole distance. Was telling me he knew how he was going to handle it, what he was going to do. what he was going to do. So I'm not always saying that parenting is going to be easy, but when it ain't easy, still be a parent. So I
Mhm.
knew that he needed a job when he was in high school. So I'd already started that up. And when I saw him floundering around, he'd already gotten into Colorado. I'd already paid for all of the dorm and everything. And he was acting like he was crazy. I said, okay, they got a place for people like that. Guess what? I said, you have this amount of time. And if you don't do it, then it's my choice. Well, so he went to the Navy just like his grandfather. So he came out of the Navy, got his degree, and he's doing great. He's still mad and edgy, but that's okay because guess what? He is so structured and so fine tuned that he
Mhm.
knows how to take very good care of himself. And
Mhm.
so does the other boy, so does the other girl. I told her to start because she had had a very difficult time in her life. And I wanted to make sure that I could structure her up and make her responsible, not only to me as a parent, but to herself. So she needed a job. She needed to be structured up. So everybody that ran up into her, she didn't think they thought she was cute like other people had told her. No, this is what you have to do in order to live in the world, is to be responsible and respectable.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, man, that's definitely very interesting. One another thing I remember you talking about that I hear people mention all the time, again for younger mothers, so to speak, is early childhood education, right? What does that mean?
What it means is that we're teaching our children a very structured learning approach. And we start it usually at about maybe 2 years old and 3 years old. And we start sitting them down and teaching them a very mandated type of learning. That's not good for everybody because, as I said before, we have different learning styles. And when you kind of force a young child like that to sit down, be quiet, you start to then, what I feel, kill that spirit. Because when children are very young, they have a very imaginative spirit and they want to learn and touch and they want to do. And you have to allow that freedom so that they continually want to explore and learn things in the world and appreciate different things. But when you
Mhm.
start boxing them in and making them and force them sit down, write that letter, do this, it's it's more, I feel like I said, it just kills that spirit. So I think the more that we can talk to our children and give them learning experiences outside of the home, taking them to the snow, taking them to places where they can learn a different language, young like that, 2 and 3 years old. I used to tell parents all the time, if they go, oh, I was talking to him and they weren't listening. I go, he speaks two languages. He's processing what you said. So don't let me hear you say that again. Because see, we see how we start to shame and blame things when we don't even know what we're talking about. So learning a different language, I always tell parents, whatever it is, let the children hear different languages, no matter. When you get into the car, put on the symphony, the opera music, because that opens up the brain waves. I said it's so important, like I said, your environments that your children are in. It makes such a big difference. And look at them and see how they respond to things. They'll let you know, wow, I really like that. Think about some of these child prodigies who are playing the piano at 5 years old, Mozart, that they thought, they said that child had Down syndrome. No, the mother was smart enough to learn or think about, not even smart enough. She was sensitive enough to sit down and look at what her child was attracted to, what they're
Mhm.
listening to, how they're developing listening. So it tells you right there, sit down and pay attention to your children. Pay
Mhm.
attention. That's what it means. Don't let nobody know your children better than you do.
Mhm. So when you were, I guess when you were parenting, when we were all younger and things like that, and we were all in the house and doing whatever we were doing, how did you decide? How did you decide what was acceptable and not acceptable? How did you decide when something was worth a battle or not, or whether something was um, something was debatable or not, whether you were willing to give or not. How did you decide what was yes, what was no, what was maybe so? Like how did you decide what those things were?
I knew the standards that I had for myself, and I felt they were pretty good standards. I knew the standards my parents had had for me, and it worked out pretty well for me too. So I was very clear about what I wanted for you guys in life. So I knew that if I wanted something for you in life, I sat down and thought about what it would take to get it. And so I knew that sitting down eating poor quality food wasn't going to help you get anything. I knew sitting down, allowing you to sit down and be my friend and we have a drink together was not going to be a part of my process. I know sitting down with you, allowing you to come home anytime you got ready and hang around with other friends that I felt weren't of the best um, nurturing experience for you, I wasn't going to allow it. So that's why my house became the house because everyone wanted to be there. And it was amazing to me because it wasn't something I said, well, no, but I knew that if you were going to do something, I wanted I preferred it to be at home. And it worked out well for me because I could see, I used to have some of as I'm thinking about all these, I used to have some of those dads or some of those sons that felt, they said, Mona Lisa, he won't do anything when he gets home. He doesn't listen. He doesn't want to do his homework. How are you getting these boys when they come to your house to do all this? I said, because I tell them. They looked at me like, you tell them? I tell them. They know what the rules are. Ain't no guesswork over here. They know what the rules are. And so by me knowing what the rules are, for me, I know what the rules are going to be for you. I'm going to structure everything up so that I can present you as the perfect gift that I can give to the world in the best possible way. We ain't drinking, smoking, staying up all night. We're going to have a spiritual life. And then if you were after 18, like you thought you were going to not go back to church anymore, and then found out you were hoorahing down the freeway every Sunday at college, because see, you put great things into a child's life and they will like those things. And I'm not trying to say I'm oh so suchy much. I'm sure Lucky has his qualms about me not letting him go to the All-Star game. But you
Hmm.
know what?
Big
I
deal.
used to take you
Traumatic.
guys to the rodeo. We used to go to the Bill
Oh
Pickett
man.
rodeo. Remember that?
Yeah.
We used to do, but
Yes.
that's why those are the things that helped me to develop and put you guys out there so you could see. Not only does mom talk it, but she puts us in environments where we can see, hey, do I want to do that? I wanted your brains to be stimulated enough to start to think about what you want and what you don't want. Well, if I do that, I can't have that.
Mhm.
And so that was just as important to me as what I said. But like I also tell parents, you can't talk right and walk left.
Mhm.
So whatever you say, stay with that.
Mhm.
Don't give no mixed signals because it doesn't work for you.
Mhm. Um, there are, man, there's so many great things that I just remember growing up, um, and one of the things I also remember you saying was, like you said, like even when your child is a baby, you would say something like, talk to them. They understand. Talk to
Hmm.
them. Like, like you said, not kitty talk, but just talk to them. Say, hey, I'm going to take a shower. I'll be right back. And it's so funny because I used to hear you say those things before I had a child and things like that. And I just remember having a certain, I don't know if I remembered you saying it or if I just knew it. I probably just remembered it and I didn't remember why I knew it. But I remember so many things now. And so I realize now as a parent that my tone with my child is very calm and things like that, probably because I started that way. I
Hmm.
didn't start off yelling. I didn't start off loud. I didn't start off, but I think it's because I believed my child understood what I was saying.
Hmm.
Even if I didn't understand exactly what they're saying, I could probably feel what they were saying more than I could understand it. But I'm
Mhm.
saying all that to say and to ask, um, maybe you could talk a little bit about, I think a lot of parents don't think their kids understand, especially babies. They don't think they understand when they say, I'll be right back, or they don't think they could possibly know. They're like, oh, they're a kid. They don't know. They don't think they can understand them. So I don't think that they actually communicate well because I don't think they believe it's possible. Not because
Mhm.
they don't mean, not because they wouldn't if they thought it were, but they don't know that it is. So, what is where did you get that concept from? Is that education? Is that experience? What is that? What is that for you?
For me, it was always just an intrinsic value that I had. I
Mhm.
always felt that I could hear and listen to what you were saying and babies were saying. That's why I would discourage as much as possible the use of pacifiers. I said because it's a babies, that's their language. They're not going to be able to say something like, "Please don't give me that terrible milk anymore." They cry, and there's a different way they cry. You can hear a panic cry, you can hear a hunger cry, you can hear a wet cry, you can hear a cry to be picked up. You can hear those cries, but if you put something in their mouth to stop that ability to hear from them, then you won't learn, and you'll start to do that every time. So sometimes children do need to have that oral satisfaction to calm themselves. And as you start to get that, then you maybe start to wean away from that so that you can hear what they're saying when they cry, because crying is their language. And so once you start to cut off that language, just like I was saying, when you start to kill that spirit, and you say, sit down, I'm not going to let you wash the dishes, you can't vacuum the floor, don't do that, don't do this, don't, they start to shrink. They start to shrink down, and they don't feel confident in themselves. And what you want your child to feel is confident, and as much as they can feel. And when you nurture that, they begin to grow and grow and grow in all areas. And you see them picking up books, and they'll put their finger on it because they've seen you do it, reading the words, and they're garbling and da 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 da. That's wonderful. You encourage that. And then as they get older, they'll begin to say, they'll remember because they're visual. Those are your visual learners. They'll be, oh, that says I, that says me. And they'll look up at you. It's just like when they get to be a certain age, they'll run around the house, then they'll stop and they'll turn around. Are you looking at me, mom? Are you looking
Mhm.
at me, dad? They'll do
Mhm.
that because they're looking for that confidence in you, that push, that nurturing, that growth in you to develop them and to nurture them. And so that's what you want to continually do in their areas of their lives so that they become strong within themselves. You don't want them to feel like I don't know what to do. And that's when you find them flailing all around. They're falling out in the market. See, I didn't have a problem. You followed in the market one time. Oh my goodness. There's a problem here. So I would always sit down wherever I was, get down on their level so they're looking at you. And if they run out and you feel them getting ready to run out into the street, you're panicked. What do? Put their hand over your heart. Do you feel my heart beating? Do you feel how you've scared me? Do you know what would happen? Cars come down here. That's not for you to walk in. But you talk to your children. You let them know. Parents sometimes just say, "Don't do that," and they're like, "Okay." What are they gonna do? Don't touch the stove. It's
That-
hot. Oh God, they got to find a way to get to the stove. So you tell them, say, it's hot. You feel this right here? You can touch that. That's hot. Can you imagine what would happen if you it would burn you. And you talk to your kids. Talking is so important because that's how we all communicate. Their crying is their first language. Doesn't mean it's bad. It means that's their first language. Learn to listen to it.
One of the last things is I remember, do not close that door. I remember just, our bedroom door was just always open. And I remember you talking about that. And like I said, there's just so many things that I think of now that I adopt or have adapted or whatever else it is. And, as a young person, you probably misunderstand that or misconstrue that as, you don't trust me or you don't like me or whatever you feel in your emotions, right, at that time. But as a parent, now I understand more what it is and what it's for because I would say it, but her doors never close anyway. She's still younger, but I understand that better now. What is that? What is that for you? What was that about for you?
At that time, I was a single mother. And so I wanted to be able to hear and to see everything I could because I understood that things can happen in the twinkling of an eye. The house could go up in fire, could have somebody coming in, that shouldn't be in the house, whatever. So I wanted to make sure that I was always able to gauge that house for any kind of safety, for any kind of concerns that I had. Plus, I knew that when I got up and my feet hit that floor, everybody knows, mom's up, get up. And if you ain't all the way standing upright, make sure your feet are on that floor. You can be sitting on the side of the bed, but I wanted to also make sure that you guys knew that you were accessible to me. You could come out into my bedroom, talk to me, even though my door was open, you do like that. Hey mom, because I wanted to I wanted to give you the best that I could give you. And I felt by me having the time, the energy, and the um, awareness of having the doors open and me accessible to you and you accessible to me made you guys, I think, feel safe. I don't think you guys ever felt unsafe. Sometimes you close that door, you're in there, and all kind of stuff could pop off. Anything. And you begin not to feel safe when you start to think about it because you don't sometimes when you have certain responsibilities and you're too young to handle them, anything could go on. So having the doors open for me helped me to encourage a home of safety and of warmth and availability and love.
Hmm. 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 And a lot of our kids have friends. And
Mhm.
so, what was your philosophy or belief? How did you um, deal with your kids' friends? Who their friends were? Who you didn't allow their friends to be? Um, if their friends came in the house and they had friends over, or whose house you allowed them to go to? What was your philosophy on friendships as it relates to your kids' friends?
I believe that my sons understood who I was, so they just weren't going to have anybody. And so I think the kids already knew that if they wanted to be a part of our household and come over there, spend the night, whether or spend the day, who how they were going to respect that household. And once I knew that they wanted to come and spend the night, there was a longer time period. I'd call their parents, and if I didn't get the feeling that I knew it was going to be a good thing, I wouldn't allow the kids to come and spend the night. They may come over and play basketball in the backyard, something like that, but I'm not going to be bothered with no foolishness. And
Mhm.
so I made sure, first of all, that you guys understood what our rules were in the house for you. Once you
Mhm.
understood that, you conveyed it to them. And once
Mhm.
they understood that, then we could move forward. We'd have a conversation. Hey, what do you think? And they go, yeah. But most of, as I said in the very beginning, the love and respect for boundaries and the rules of our house led everybody to want it. We'd always have kids who wanted to come. They always wanted to come and
Mhm.
be there. And there were so many. I remember one uncle who used to call me all the time. He just couldn't believe that he said I got to take him to buy. He said he has to have a suit for church to go to church with you, and they loved it. I was, but guess what? I said after church you
Oh
pick
yeah, of course.
anywhere you want to go for brunch and we'll go, whether it's a Ritz Carlton, RJ's Rib Joint, Castaways, wherever. we would always go to brunch and we'd have a great time because
Mhm.
I was showing them not only how much it was important for me to have time with them and them loving to be there with us, but how much I
Mhm.
appreciated them coming and wanting to be there. And I wanted to give them the best that I had. And everybody knew that we went to church. So it wasn't something like they were disagreeing with what we were doing. They enjoyed us taking them to church and having a good time afterwards. But that was the rule. You come and spend the night on a Saturday, guess what? Don't try to sneak out here at 6 o'clock in the morning. That ain't gonna work.
Mhm. Mhm.
But they all wanted to stay and go to church.
Mhm. Yeah, that was the best, worst ride ever. We couldn't roll down the windows. We couldn't listen to what we wanted to listen to. It was hot in the back of the van. Oh man, it was the worst, but it was the best. It was the worst, best time of all time. Oh man, of all time, all
Don't mess
time.
up my hair. Don't make my hair
Oh,
get. Don't
don't.
make me sweat.
Yes, don't roll the window down. I just got my hair done. We can't breathe in the back, having to open a little little vents in the back, trying to breathe in a little slit. Oh, it was the worst. Oh yeah, it was the worst. Well, good. I know that you help a lot of people still, whether it's, you know, their ideas for daycare, or you help a lot of mothers at different area, with young kids, older kids, um, and you help people with, like I said, daycares, mothers with their things. And so, do you I wanted to make sure that we got your contact information, just in case people wanted to reach out to you for the services you provide, the information you provide. um, uh, Especially now that you have more time and all of us are gone and you've been able to do more things without us being at home. But I wanted to get your information, so that people could reach out to you. I know you have a lot of people contact you via email, and I want you to be able to have time to send your email out to people so that
Okay.
the
I
people who
just wanted
hear
to
this can
mention
do that.
I just wanted
Yeah.
to mention one last career that I did after I retired from
Yeah.
the whole early child development era in my life, which was over 25 years, was when I began to do work with only men in recovery,
Oh, that's
drug and
right.
alcohol. I did
That's
that for
right.
13 years. I
Sober
worked with
living home.
from the most expensive um, treatment centers in Malibu to guys coming out of prison. I loved it. I
Yeah.
loved it. It was such an amazing time for me. I had three sober houses at that time, and it was such a wonderful experience to give to all the men. And I enjoyed the ones, especially who came out of prison, because they
Mhm.
were really wanting to see a different life. Sometimes they weren't
Mhm.
always the most easy to deal with at first, but then they began to they opened up to me, and I just loved it. I know that I used to hear about them kind of doing the same things that you guys would do. They say, "Oh, here she comes. She's gonna stomp the yard." And they'd be texting each other in the houses. She's coming. She's coming. And one of the
Mhm.
great things is those guys talked to me, respected me, and protected me in ways that you would think I was a mother figure. So I just wanted to make sure that people always knew I just didn't deal in such a very um, childhood experiences, but I'd had some other experiences in my life that I enjoyed too.
Oh yeah, I do remember those sober living homes. I do remember several of those houses. We would go by and visit and talk to people and sit down. And I remember Bobby Baby,
Yeah,
and
yeah, Ted.
yeah, Ted. I remember
Mhm.
talking to him on one of the steps
George.
on 21st Street, and I remember him saying abs are made in the kitchen. I remember, yeah, I remember on so many of those guys and so many different homes and places and things like that. And yeah, yeah, I definitely remember that. So yeah, so I definitely wanted you to be able to give your contact information so people could reach out to you, for some of the services you provide, and things like that.
Oh, okay. My email
Yeah, that's
is
fine, whatever.
Okay, is F Mona, Mona, 7415 at gmail.com.
Is this like some kind of NASA site? What
Hey, you
kind of?
know what? I have to be careful. I got to keep all my different businesses different, different email.
Gosh. Okay, say it one more time.
F Mona, Mona, 7415 at gmail.com.
Oh, this is too much. This
Oh,
is I
yeah.
didn't even know about that one. This is way too much. Gosh, you gotta do it every week.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got to keep all these businesses separate so I know what I'm dealing with.
Man, I see. Well,
Hmm.
yeah, well, definitely, Mom. Thank you for coming on. I definitely appreciate, your wisdom, your experience, and your expertise. And that is the goal of Lanes of Mastery is to, I love to learn. And so I love to pick the brains of people who have mastered their lane, who do something really well. And so to put something out, to put this information out to people who are just driving down the street or happen to catch it on a site that we put it on or whatever, and can see someone talking about something that interests them or can learn something interesting about someone who may be doing something different but has a skill that they have acquired and used to master something in their life that maybe they can take that skill and apply it to what they're doing, right? So we have all kind of people on, and I wanted to bring you on, not just because you're my mother, but because of the success that you've had, the experiences that you've had, the businesses that you've had, the professionalism that you have displayed, and also, just the the appreciation I have now of your parenting now that I'm a parent and realizing how many the structure and the disciplines and a lot of the um, responsibilities and boundaries that you put up that I now have a better understanding of and the benefit of those things that have lasted me up into this age and that really stopped me from having a lot of traumas, issues, incidents, jail records, and, maybe just things that I might have got into if you weren't paying as close attention as you were. And so I want other people who are raising kids or who are thinking about that or who have them already, to be able to hear someone who maybe is a little further ahead, who's already done it and done it in a way that has produced, I'm sure every parent's desired outcome, which is just to have, successful children, great relationships with them, and to understand, maybe get some information and the why of of something, so that they understand if I change this, what am I changing and why? What is the benefit, right?
Hmm.
Because I think a lot of times as parents, if nothing else, we'll labor, but I would say most of us don't always have an active working vision or plan. We're just
Right.
more like disaster service workers going from emergency to emergency,
Right.
right? Because everything is reactive, very little
Hmm.
is proactive. Whether it's
Hmm.
just you don't know any better, or whether it's just, you're so tired and you're not available or aren't, whatever it is. So I think just having you on was really important to be able to capture some of your experiences, your experience, your wisdom, your professionalism, and things like that, so people could get a little bit of understanding about different areas of, um, human experience, human interaction, right, and things like that. So thank you so much for coming on. I super appreciate it, and maybe I'll have you back on a little bit later on and we can talk about some more aspects because there are a lot of other things like you talked about sober living. There are some other different things that I want to get into you with as well, and and we'll definitely do that in the future.
Thank you so much, Lucky. I appreciate it. I hope that, I've some way I've helped someone because
Mhm,
parenting isn't for cowards. It's not an easy job. And as you said, I'd rather for people to be proactive rather than reactive.
mhm. Well, great. All right. Well, hey, have a great rest of the day. We'll definitely catch up later. Thank you for coming on, and we'll catch up later.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Good evening. Bye.